Don't get me wrong. I'm glad we're hunting him down. But why did he leave in the first place? What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do mean to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. So another fun fact, here we are to do a breakdown, I was about to say live reaction review, but fun fact, the live reaction, which is like 30 minutes long, the 30-minute live reaction to this very chapter is over on Patreon for as low as $1 a month, or you become a member for as low as $3 a month to get access to the 30-minute live reaction to this very chapter, which is known as Majority Vote, Chapter 10 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, and I'm excited. Obviously, there is a big bad thing that I've seen everybody go crazy about. In fact, I was even spoiled of it before I got to the live reaction, because of course, if there's one thing that goes hand to hand, it's JJK spoilers. JJK spoilers, man. Like, not a single spoiler, just straight showed it. But to be fair, it's like one panel. It's one panel again. It's like the same scenario that happened with what, like chapter 6, I think, where like one whole panel was shown and everyone's like, oh, he's back. But that same thing happened here, and in fact, he's far from back. He's literally gone. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's hop right into chapter 10 of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, which is known as Majority Vote. Hey, can we really allow this? And we're talking, obviously, about Maru fighting against, I'm going to call him Takada. Once again, I don't know if that was actually ever his name for real, if he just made that up, but Takada, essentially the battle that happened here. And actually, Usami's looking on like, what do you mean? He's doing his job? Meaning? And the older gentleman says, don't you think we're letting the aliens get away with too much? Or it was Samurians who refused your suggestion for escort, Usami. So, this is interesting, right? Obviously, I mean, like, no, it's not so much interesting as it is sad. Because let's be honest. In fact, look at it. You know I have it on me. You know I keep it on me. I'll put it down. I'm a slide back a little bit. I'm gonna raise the chair higher, and I'm gonna crack the bones in my body as I stretch out. Ooh, get a good stretch. Crack the back. Hit a twist. It was leg day today. I should not be this. But, let me put my hands together. Let me wiggle my fingies a little bit. Let's be completely real with ourselves. Only if, aliens were to appear on our planet now, right now, what do you think humans' first response would be? What do you think? Huh? Do you think it would be, oh, let's communicate with him? Or do you think it would be, bang? You know it would be, bang. So I'm not shocked that the old guy, and very specifically this guy who goes nameless, are so eager to get to, me, because like humans, well, it's not even really, is it really so controversial for me to say that humans love violence against other sentient species? Or other members of their very same sentient species. Let's get a little meta real quick. Let's get a little meta. Let's wiggle our fingers together and get a little meta together. Come in close. I'm gonna whisper to you just to make sure we on the same page. Is there really a reason for a human to harm another human? In the current day. Right. We'll even get super specific, right? We'll get super specific. Is there really a reason in the current world where there is tons upon tons of food being thrown away, countless empty houses or just empty spaces, empty lots where people could live, and so many like financial resources that if you were to split them all evenly, everyone would probably be a millionaire or close to it at bare minimum. If you were to just take all the financial resources that exist, because, money, it's a system. If you took all the financial resources that exist, from the multi-billionaires, near trillionaires, down to the million, if you were to split all that evenly, that you could give it to literally every single of the 8 billion, probably soon to be 9 billion people on the planet, and everyone would be a millionaire and it would be fine. Is there really a reason for us to be in conflict? Let's be honest. As a people. Why are we fighting? It's not the Stone Age anymore. It's not even like the early like everybody knows everybody. There are definitely some uncontacted tribes who like would be horrified if we just appeared one day, and those are, but they're the exception, not the rule. Is there any reason for two landmasses to really be fighting? No. Let's be honest. But why do we fight? Greed. Why do we fight? Because we want. Why do we fight? Because it's in our nature. And don't get me wrong, there is just a natural, base, violent aspect to life. Nothing can perpetuate itself without taking something else from something. Literally everything you know is taking something from something. The only things that technically don't take anything from anybody are most plants, but even some plants eat other things. So, but like, in order for you and I to live, we need to eat something else that would have preferred to be alive. We need to eat plants, which whole thing, just like everything else that lives, is to perpetuate living. Some of us, your boy included, I'm a meat muncher, dare I say, we eat animals, you know, because we do. So I get that little base level of that. But like, what reason does a human have to harm another human? None. So what do you think humans would do if we did run into another sentient species? Even if, and this is under the assumption that they look like the Samurians, who outside the third eye are just humans. And obviously for Dabura, it's the Deskunte horns and the third eye. But like, oh, and I suppose the markings, but those are just tattoos from like a common viewing point. If you were to see Maru on the street, Marulu on the street, you wouldn't really ask any questions. You may be wondering, oh, I hope his forehead's okay, but that's it. Is there any real reason for us to be fighting? No! But I'm telling you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, if aliens were to appear one day, and they were sentient, and they wanted to communicate with us, we'd fight them. I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to. I don't want to communicate with them. But many people in power, such as this guy here and this guy here, these two, they want to fight him for absolutely no reason. We all know it's true. It's unfortunate, but I feel like that would be like that. Especially would be like that. We know it's true. We know it's a fact. So it's not surprising, but it is kind of sad that, of course, because of human nature, this guy's like, oh, don't you think we're letting them get away too much? Or there's millions of them. But like, what have they done? Oh no, they had one curse user. Oh, you mean the thing they're supposed to do? Oh no, they almost harmed a source. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But like, according to the video they saw, or at least the video they were supposed to have seen, all they did was fight a curse user who had harmed sorcerers. Oh no. How scary. We're letting them get away with too. What are they getting away with? But of course, we see Usami go to argue, all that happened in this case was that both sorcerers were incapacitated. So, Special Envoy Marulu stepped in to resolve the situation. Nothing more to it. Exactly, right? Maru saw that both of his escorts were down and said, hold on, let me lock in, twin. And he locked in, twin. But of course, we see that this guy here, who admittedly does actually kind of have a low-key, kind of a clean fade and a jawline that could cut diamonds. I ain't gonna lie to you, this guy's low-key mogging me. Hold on. He's still mogging me. I just really need a cut. But let's see. Hold on. But then, within the second year, Tsurugi Kotsu attempted to intervene. Special Envoy Marulu tried to harm him. And that's the big thing, right? Maybe we'll let him get away too. But even still, I'll get to it in a second, because this is the main guy where I'm going to make the argument of it'd be stupid in that universe, and especially in our universe, to deal with any sort of alien conflict at all directly. But we'll see. As you see, Mina looks over and says, huh? And naturally, we cut back to a short time in the past where Usami was telling Mino, delete the part of the video that shows Maru and Tsurugi. And naturally, Mino's like, oh, I deleted it, Usami. I swear I deleted it. Which obviously I assume he did. But it's likely that the files were already saved. It's like raw government footage. I wouldn't be shocked if the originals were saved, just because like stuff like that just does happen. Like, edited videos are always like saved with the original. Even like I know like with my edited videos, in fact, I had to clean up my computer recently because I had kept, what I do is I obviously I record my videos through OBS, then I edit them in my editing software, then I export them, and then I upload the exported video, right? So everything flows together smoothly, has the music in the background and all that. But I forgot to delete the videos, like the raw videos themselves. So like they were all there building up. So like I think like the past half a year of just like raw videos were just sitting there, and that's why my PC was full. I was wondering like, oh, why is my storage full? I have so much storage on this PC. What do you mean it's full? I was like, oh, literal like over, like if you were to total how many like just videos there were, considering how many my videos are like nearly an hour long or an hour plus, probably like over a month, or not a month, probably like a week of just straight content, like 24 times 7. It was that much content just sitting there. So that's why my computer was full. But with that being the case, that's probably what happened here, where the raw original video files, especially considering they communicate with like the weird wrist thing, was probably uploaded to a database. The edited version that Mino sent or showed was like, didn't really matter. They had access to the originals. When we see this guy with the crazy jawline say, so according to Article 7 of the Jujutsu regulations, the Sumerians should be categorized as threats. And we see this woman, who have we seen this woman before? My brain is telling me we've seen this woman before, but I don't think we've seen this woman before. But she looks familiar. Something about her design looks familiar. My brain is screaming Hilda from Fire Emblem Three Houses, but I'm talking like familiar in the Jujutsu Kaisen sense. So like obviously that's not Hilda von Gonriel from Fire Emblem Three Houses. So like I don't know why my brain is screaming you've seen this character before. Maybe we have seen her in the manga before, or maybe I'm just straight hallucinating. It would not be the first time. In a Blue Lock review, I hallucinated a whole extra goal. I spent like the first 5 minutes of review saying, "Oh, there's 5 goals," or no, 4 goals. It was 4-0. It was not 4-0. It was 3-0. I was stupid. I don't get it. I'm dumb. So like I'm maybe hallucinating this character, but something about this design screams familiarity to me. And it may be my brain overlapping with Hilda. But even then, Hilda doesn't have these kind of pigtails. She has like just the ones that are wrapped up like in that. I think they're like on the back of her head. So I don't know why this design seems so familiar to me. But we see Usami say, not according to the Hikari provision. And naturally this guy goes, huh? And another one of the nameless characters here goes, the Hikari provision? And the woman explains, a long time ago, there was talk about making jutsu battles into performances as a public form of gambling. And naturally the guy goes, what? What kind of restless gambler individual would ever do such a thing? And the woman explains, the government made the existence of cursed spirits public due to the culling game, so Article 8's secrecy clause basically lost all meaning. And the performances were scrapped too. So, this does confirm that Hikari did try to get his whole gambling ring off the ground, but it just didn't, like, it was never legalized, unfortunately. Which is, like, I mean, I guess it does make sense, like, but even then, it makes sense until it doesn't. Like, it would be a good economic thing. Maybe they just didn't want to give Hikari all that, like, economic power, because, like, think of, like, actual fighting. MMA is, like, a big thing. Like, I know wrestling is, like, mostly performative, but, like, for MMA, mixed martial arts, the UFC, the United Fighting Commission, I believe, like, whatever it's called, like, that is a thing. It's just sanctioned violence that you show. Heck, even football, just in general, like American football at least, is extremely violent. Even regular, like, worldwide football is also kind of violent, depending on how it goes. So, like, I don't know, I'm actually kind of shocked that they wouldn't go with that, because it's, like, money. But then again, there are also many times in our world where things that were once illegal are now legal and make a whole bunch of money. Because the people who have the ability to determine what is legal and what isn't realize that they could make a lot of money doing the thing that was once illegal. I'm referencing something specific, but I don't want to go too far into it. But, like, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. There are people still serving time for dealing something that has been legal for, like, it's well over half a decade at this point. Like, it's been a minute. But there are people who are still serving sentences for dealing it because, oh, it wasn't legal, but now, like, there's places where you can get it on every single corner. Why? Because now the money is behind it. And so the people in power want to make us more money. They split out, and then that's legal. Oh, you got arrested for that right before it became legal? Shame. Serve your 15 years. 15. Usually it's more. But with it being the case, we see that the two assistants like, how could they think it'd ever get approved? But knowing that some of the things that have been approved, I don't blame Hikari for trying. I'm glad they at least let him try, right? And once again, despite me feeling bad for Hikari not getting it legally, he did it illegally. Who were they going to send to stop him? Do you think Yuji was going to go beat up Hikari? No. Do you think Maka's going to go beat up Hikari? Maybe. Do you think Yudo's going to go beat up Hikari? No. Like, ultimately Hikari probably just ran his illegal ring until he... But then again, we don't even know if he, considering a certain someone is still alive, apparently. Yuda and Maki kicked the bucket, I guess, but not in certain someone. But we see, the woman explains, anyway, the Hikari provision was created... Wait. The Hikari provision was created when they made preliminary revisions to the Jujutsu regulations. It includes a clause that allows sorcerers to engage in paid combat. And, of course, the two, I'm assuming, maybe sorcerer assistants or non-sorcerer assistants were like, oh, I had no idea. And the woman explains, well, that's because nowadays you never run into that provision unless you're getting hired as a personal bodyguard. So, essentially... It's like sanctioned sorcerer fight. So maybe even Hikari did run his ring, he just didn't run it in the same way that he did before. If he got the provision 3, he may have just been like, okay. So he may have like paid somebody to, he may have had like a proxy, right? Like he said, okay, so I'm going to put this guy, I'm going to attach this sorcerer to this guy, and then this sorcerer to that guy. They're paid bodyguards. They're going to do battle for the sake of the person they're protecting in this and that. Like I could see ways to use the Hikari clause. It's literally named for him. So I'm assuming he probably played some sort of role in making this still make money for him. So like you can always find some. You can always find some. And we see that Usami explains, Special Envoy Modulo, Tsurugi Okotsu, and Yuka Okotsu have all signed contracts with me. And under the Hikari provision, there's no problem with Jujutsu battles between contracted individuals. Which is interesting, but also makes sense. Essentially, Jujutsu battles in this case would be training, quote unquote. Even if in that context, clearly it was not training, Modulo was going to attack Tsurugi intentionally due to the nature of the third eye. Once again, we still don't really get Maru's curse technique or cross. The flashback ended last chapter with them creating the ship. We still don't know how they did that. We get it stated all the way back in chapter 1 that Maru's curse technique has something to do with balance. So, like, I don't know. I still don't know how that works. And once again, the balance thing doesn't seem to make sense because he made the weight max out and the clock run infinitely. So, like, I still don't get Maru's curse technique. Personally, I still think it has to do with raising and lowering things. It's just that he was set on raising everything. And then, like, he could raise temperatures, lower temperatures. But then someone brought up air pressure as a good idea. I don't know. What do my mutuals do? So, like, it is a complicated thing. We're going to learn it eventually, though. With Modulo being a short-run manga, we may learn it, like, the next 5 chapters or so. But with it being the case, we see that essentially Usami set this up as a precautionary measure, right? In case everything ever went wrong, as we get a little flashback to Usami saying, sign this for me. And naturally Maru's like, in Japanese? And both Yuka and Tsurugi look on, a little concerned, and Tsurugi even says, at least read it first. Which, yeah, but like, I that is interesting though, like, how legally binding is a document like that for Maru? Like, obviously in this case, it's legally binding because Usami needs to be legally binding in order to get away with this, but like, how, like, I guess, like, if they're full, like, if, once again, go to the idea, if aliens were to appear on our planet, they would they be bound by our legal system? Like, it's why I always wonder, like, how would Higuruma up against Mahito go? Like, is Mahito bound by the human legal system just because he lives in Japan? Maybe? maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know, it's weird. But, I mean, probably, because it just enforces the rules, right? Like, they ultimately, despite Higuruma's domain following, like, the Japanese legal code, I guess, like, if he were to fight Miguel, technically, Miguel would still be under the effects of deadly sentencing, and you just be charged under the Japanese legal code rather than, even if you're not from Japan, you're probably still likely just charged under the Japanese legal code for actions you have taken. Like, the law just applies in specific context. Probably. I'd assume, for my sanity. But we see that the guy with the clean cut and the sharp jawline says, that's ridiculous! Only sorcerers approved by Jujutsu headquarters are allowed to engage in combat for hire. And we see that Usami says, well, Maru was hired as a general bodyguard. And that is legally true based on the contract. It is interesting though, because they call him special envoy, but it does make sense to have him signed up that way. So essentially, on the human side of things, he can slide for using his CT. That's the main thing, right? Just put it under the rug and be like, yeah, you can use it, you can box. He just shouldn't need to, but in cases where he does need to, you know, he can. Let's see. The woman explains, are you trying to say this is all an accident caused by a latent sorcerer? And we have Mino explaining, latent sorcerer is someone who uses Jujutsu unknowingly. Incidents caused by latent sorcerers are treated with leniency, so they're usually not punished. So essentially think of it as if, like, spontaneously, you and I both were sitting here, and you unlocked Suguna's technique, and I unlocked Gojo's technique. I guess the 6th eye, so I can actually use it. And I just randomly went, I threw my hand out, and then suddenly a blue erupted from my fingertips and destroyed the building. And then you're like, whoa, what happened? And then you, like, cut me in half with a dismantle. Why would you do that to me, man? I just awakened my Jujutsu. I didn't figure out Infinity yet. You just sliced me in half, gang. Why'd you have to do that to me? But you just dismantled me in half. You wouldn't be charged for the loss of my life. Obviously, that's not actually happening. Please don't dismantle it. But still, like, that's presumably what latent sorcerer is, right? You accidentally activate your power. It's kind of like how it really should be in the Marvel Universe most of the time, where, like, when a mutant spontaneously gets their powers, it shouldn't actually be their fault. But usually, you know, mutants and allegories and such like that, they are not given any form of leeway for what happens when their powers first awaken. But we see that the woman finds this funny, but she can't exactly argue against it. It's like essentially whenever someone exploits a loophole, right? Where they're like, oh, well, shoot. it's an interpretation that technically fits within the clause in the laws, where it's like, no, darn, gang. I guess that's a wrap. Let's see. The guy with the, once again, this really, like an extremely sharp jawline. Like, I respect the build. Oh, this jawline is immaculate. But he says, I'm telling you, this is ridiculous. It should be a known fact that Samurians wield cursed energy. And we see that Usami says, we don't know if that's certain. We don't know for certain if that's true for all Samurians. And that is true. If the Samurians are anything like humans, while there are 50,000 of them, it's not that all humans wield cursed energy. They just have cursed energy. The only exceptions are obviously Maki and Toji, but every single living being has cursed energy. But that doesn't mean every single person classifies as a sorcerer. It's kind of like how, for something in our universe, everybody has fists and feet, but not everybody's a fighter, right? Just because you have something doesn't mean you can use them properly. Like, there are some people who literally have to get, like, their body registered as a lethal or legal weapon because they're that lethally dangerous with, I think, is that a thing? Hold on. We're gonna run it to the Googler. Let's see. Do people who know how to fight need to register their body as a weapon? This sounds stupid. Register their body as a weapon. Let's see. No, there's no generally requirement for people who know how to fight the rest of their body as a weapon. Those are widespread myth. Okay, never mind. Yeah, all right, so never mind. That's not even a thing. But the initial point still stands, right? That's not a thing. The whole idea that you register is not a thing. But yeah, they're myth, but it's false and no one can register as such. All right. So yeah. So that was just a myth I fell for. But the context is still the same, right? You have hands. You don't know how to fight. You're not a fighter. But fighters who also have hands and know how to use them are fighters, right? Same thing for Sumerians, same thing for humans. Every human has cursed energy. Not every human is a sorcerer. How do we? It's like a square is always a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't always a square, kind of thing. But we see that the guy asks, "Why are you going out of your way to side with the Sumerians?" And naturally, Usami's like, "Why are you going out of your way to side against them?" Now this is something interesting. I'm going to talk about this real quick. We're going to dive into it for a second. Hold on, let me take a sip of water. I want you to know something. From all known laws of physics, if sentient aliens ever appeared on our planet, we've already lost. And we'd be like, whoa, playboy. What on earth are you talking about? We're humanity, dog. We got La Bombas Nuclear, big bro. Ain't no one stopped it. I'm not going to say never, because obviously people believe that we'd never be able to fly. And now flying is like a common part of human life that happens literally every single day. But, this being the case, we are never figuring out even relativistic travel. The fastest a human creation will probably ever go is maybe a few times faster than sound. In fact, let me see. Is there any... I'm going to look this up. I highly doubt it. Is there any human creation that moves at 1% the speed of light? Moves at... Nope, I clicked on the wrong thing. Was at 1% the speed of light. Since education remains impossible, no objective object can travel as fast. No, not fast. Let's see, that's the thing. That's not gonna like it. No, okay, so it's not even. Have we made an object testing? Spacecraft, fastest spacecraft reached 300. Oh, this is from 2021 though. It's on the conversation. I'm not sure there's an actual relevant source, but 330,000 miles per hour, only 0.05% the speed of light. For reference, if you probably know the common number, if the sun were to spontaneously disappear, we wouldn't notice for 8 minutes, because that's how long it takes for light to reach Earth. The gravity impacts would be weird. Like, if the sun were to disappear, there's, like, hot debate on what would actually happen. Like the planet. Like, obviously, the sun also acts as, like, radiation shielding because of its own radiation. Like, it's there's a lot of complicated stuff. But at least, like, light-wise, the whole point that we're talking about here is speed, and why it's very important, why we would lose if aliens ever were to appear, and why, ultimately, if they were to ever appear, I'd say don't antagonize them under any circumstance, don't matter what they do. It'll take 8 minutes for light to reach us from the sun. How long does it take light from the sun to reach Pluto, which is a dwarf planet now? I could do Neptune, but I'm going to go Pluto. It takes light, in average, about 5.5 hours to travel from the sun to Pluto. That's according to Wikipedia. We'll go with it. That's just, and that's once again, light. Something that in our universe, nothing with actual mass can move at light speed without becoming infinite and destroying literally everything. while there are billions of exoplanets in our Milky Way galaxy alone that could be equivalent to Earth, from what we've seen of them, none of them have life that's complex. So presumably, a complex life will have to come from outside our galaxy. So for other sentient alien species to reach us, they have had to either figure out warp travel, FTL travel without breaking the universe, mind you, and or teleportation technology. We've already lost. If they are figured out faster than light travel, they could just throw a rock at light speed and destroy the entire planet, because the rock would spontaneously gain infinite mass and just destroy the whole thing. It is not worth, on any circumstances, fighting aliens. But we would do it anyway. Once again, like I mentioned in the video, we just love to fight. We just love to fight each other. We love to fight each other. We give us a whole other enemy, even if they wouldn't actually be an enemy, if we were actually rational, we're gonna fight them. So I'm not shocked about this guy wanting to fight them so badly. But I'm shocked that no one else is pushing back like Tommy. It's like, why do you want to fight these people? Why do you want to do it? Like, obviously this guy didn't meet Dabura, but at the same time, I don't get. I mean, why would you fight people who have done what we could possibly never do? Like, who knows? Maybe we'll somehow figure it out. Science is ever evolving, but like, I highly doubt it. I doubt if the planet lasts that long. I doubt my grandkids will live to see a world where we reach even 25% the speed of light. I'm real eyeballing it, dog. Like I said, the fastest spacecraft ever was 0.05% the speed of light. We never even get into a percentage, if we're being completely honest. So why are we trying to fight them? I don't blame someone for being like, dude, what? Why? Like, why are y'all so eager? Because y'all will lose. They could throw the spaceship at the planet, and y'all are done. But we see that ultimately the guy believes, cause in diplomacy, once they stop taking you seriously, it's over. They've already kept us in check once, which is presumably the appearance of Dabura, right? Like Dabura showing up and Flex, and was them very specifically being like, hey, we got it. What you want to do? Like, that was essentially, it's the I don't know what the scene is from. It's that scene where some guys walk into like a restaurant, and then there are two guys sitting at a table. The one guy sees the other guys walk in, and he just reaches into his pocket, puts that thing on the table, puts the piece on the table. And the other guys are, whoa. That's essentially what the Sumerians did. By throwing off Dabura, they're like, what you gonna do about it? And now what they see, and what now the humans want to do, is they say this: it's time for us to demonstrate the power of our own deterrent. We need to find Yuji Itadori. So, here's the thing about this. As cool as it is to see Yuji, one, I'm not sure if this is accurate to Yuji's current appearance. Once again, Choso is 150 years old. He's been refining his curse technique for 150 years. That is true. He was doing that in his own internal realm. Choso, while being half-cursed spirit, isn't necessarily, like, immortal or anything. Like, I've seen a lot of people theorize that he is. A lot of people are assuming Yuji's still in his prime because he ages slow or something like that, or doesn't age at all because of the fact that he ate his siblings. I don't think so. He gained a body like Choso, but it's not confirmed that Choso had super longevity or anything. The only reason he was able to maintain that is because he was literally in, like, a little stasis tube as a womb. Remember? They were the cursed wombs. So, like, I don't think Yuji should be consistently young. In fact, he's being drawn in the same way as he was back when Takeda was flashing back to Yuji in chapter 6, I do believe. But at the same time, it is interesting that he's alive, right? Like, notably, the guy all the way back in chapter 1 said, do you know anyone as spectacular as that who's still around? But he was just a random guy, so maybe he just didn't know that Yuji was still around. But then, of course, there's a natural question. We need to find Yuji Itadori. Not we need to call him up. Not we need to have him meet Dabura. Not we need to dap him up. No, it's we need to find... Why did he leave? What happened? Very specifically, the Yuji at the end of JJK was very focused on, like, fostering the next generation. Being the next Gojo. You know, like, raising up the youth and doing everything in his power to do it. So while he may be older beneath that hood, or hoodie, or something like that, why did he just leave? How effective is he as a deterrent? Like, why did he leave? What happened in the Jujutsu world? That was like, they had Yuji of all characters being like, yeah, you know, I was going to be the next Gojo and all, you know, like raising up the next generation and making sure y'all can take care of yourselves on some Son Goku after the Cell Saga, so he'd be, but nah, I'm just dipping. Like, what happened? Why is he on the move? Is he like hunting curses all over the world? Is he in that Gojo state, but like he's so cogged himself out? Somehow that sounds wrong. But he's so cogged himself out, he doesn't even like think of like checking in anymore. He's gonna like show up and be like, "Oh, how long's it been? Hey, I kind of want to see. I want to go spar with Maki again. It's been a while." Sir, Maki's been dead for like 6 years. Wait, what? Like, is that it? What happened? What made Yuji leave? That's what I'm interested in. Obviously, Jujutsu Society has changed a lot and changed for the better, I'd say, overall in comparison to 68 years ago. But still, I do wonder what made Yuji leave in the first place, and why do they not have his information? What did Jujutsu Society do to spurn Yuji Itadori, and what made Yuji essentially give up, right? Like, he's not even working with the system to the point where they need to find him. I'm not sure if this is a translation thing, but they need to hunt him down. I don't think they have him on speed dial, or else they probably would have brought him to the Double meeting. He'd probably be in this meeting right now, but he's not. So that is interesting. I do genuinely wonder, what happened with Yuji Itadori? What made him go like this? And obviously, you know, with Mahito appearing two or three chapters ago, obviously their rematch is building, but I do wonder, was it just to hunt down Mai? I don't know. It's a very interesting set of circumstances. I do wonder if Yuji is going to look older. I hope he does. I want to see an old man Yuji. I would love to see an old man Maki, or old woman Maki, an old man Yuji English, an old man Yuta fight, and an old man Hikari fight. It would have been nice to see all those, but I don't know. We'll see. Is Hikari even still alive? They have the Hikari clause, but they don't confirm he's dead or not. But with it being the case, we see Usami say this: "It's all over once they stop taking it seriously." Sure, that may be true for an individual or a private company, but that kind of mindset doesn't apply to international relations. And that's true, for one, in the sense that, yeah, just because they aren't taking you seriously doesn't mean diplomacy isn't still a thing. Clearly, if they weren't taking you so seriously, they would have attacked already. And two, international relations is more complicated. And very specifically, Usami says, if you want to stir up things, if you want to stir things up, just English! Pencil man, slow down. Take a sip. Your lips are dry. Hold on. Alright. Slow it down and English it. Usami voice, go. If you want to stir things up just to feel like you're getting something done at work, then that's your own business. But don't drag the rest of us, or the country, or the very world into it. So that is a good point, right? He didn't say the very world part, but still I had that. But that's the thing. Usami is likely thinking rationally. We're ultimately aggroing the Sumerians into combat just isn't a smart move. There's no real reason to. It's not worth the risk, and I agree with him on that. But we see the guy go, "Ugh, even with my sharp jawline, he's got me." And we see that ultimately Usami walks out with Mino, and he says, apologize to him for me later, will you? And Mino says, I don't think you were in the wrong here, Usami. But I do think that... Oh no, but then Usami says, I do think that searching for Yuji Itadori wouldn't hurt. See, man, who's translating right now? Translation, Andrea McKnight, lettering Elena Diaz. I'm just noticing now. This line here, but I don't think you're searching for Yuji Itadori would hurt. Or searching for Yuji Itadori would hurt either, plus. I don't think... Oh, wait, no, never mind. I read that wrong. Never mind, that wasn't even... That was me being stupid because I'm reading too fast. But I don't think searching for Yuji Itadori would hurt either. Plus, nothing good ever comes from making enemies of your own people. And that's true, right? Ultimately, including this is being built into the next scene that's going to happen after this, the majority vote. But that is true. It's very unfortunate, but there's a reason the phrase, you can trust your enemy, but you can never trust your friend, is a phrase at all. That's not the phrase at all. Like, that's a version of multiple different phrases that kind of slap together. But the idea is, you must always watch your back, because your enemy will be in front of you. The reason it's good to have an enemy is that you'll be able to fight them directly. But if someone stabs you in the back because you trusted them, it's raps. Which is why you never do want to make enemies of your own people. You never want a snake in your boots, if you would. Remember, Woody Theory purists out there. For any of my insane Delta Pill people. But that's the thing. You never want that issue. So best thing to do is to make sure it doesn't happen by being as kind and cordial as polite as possible. And it's true. Like, you want to keep your allies, if you know. Your own family can betray you, not to talk of people you're working with. So it is smart to not make enemies of your own people. But of course, why such a specific thing? Because there are enemies within, everywhere, not just in humans, but in Rumelians. As we see, wait, it's better. Let's see. We meet two. woo, we meet two characters. I thought these were characters from that we had met already, but I think these are two different characters. As the big buff, and I do mean big, but like sweet mother, I want his build. His games are immaculate. As Guy says, why does an outsider like Dumbledore get the final say? What's the point of the discussions and the vote then? And we see the older gentleman say, that's how a controlled council system works. And the big beefy guy says, or Osuki, right? Osuki says, how is that any different from a dictatorship? It's a little. I mean, I guess the difference is with a dictatorship is that what the dictator says goes. There are no votes. There's no discussion. None of it. There's no you follow orders. Gosh darn it. But very specifically, it's not even like Dabura himself was making super specific choices and then guiding them along and then making the vote on that. Dabura is kind of just like he's the hammer. He can choose, or he has the hammer. He can choose whether or not a planet. Dabura is just like me, for real. He has it on him, and he keeps it on him at all times, and he bangs the hammer. He determines if the vote is worthy or not, so he can veto it. But then again, he can approve it, right? So, if the vote is negative, then Dabura can veto that, or if the vote is positive, Dabura can veto that. But either way, Dabura just has, like, veto power, which is technically similar and very built into kind of our system as well, or at least, like, a lot of Earth political systems. But we see that ultimately it was Maru and Cross's choice, or Marulu and Cross's choice, to have the system function this way. As the old man says, this is what Marulu and Cross decided. They said, now that Dora is gone, Dabura is the most qualified to be our chieftain. So wait, Dora was the chieftain. I think that's what that line is meant to imply there, right? Because since Dora is gone, so was Dora? For some reason I didn't get that vibe. But I guess Dora was the chieftain. But no, he couldn't have, because they were rebelling. I don't know, that's weird. But we do know that the Sumerian culture in general, even if the Discontinuity were heavy-handed about it, it is based on strength, and Dura did seem to be the strongest Sumerian, so like maybe he was chief in deference, but there was the chief council that Dura was supposedly working, not necessarily against, but he wasn't working for when he initially started building the canal, so I don't know. It's interesting. It is interesting phrasing there, but ultimately, Dabura becomes the new chieftain because he's the strongest. And we see that the old man says, and they think that because he is an outsider, he can make the most objective decisions. And we see that the guy here, Otsuki, says, I'm sick and tired of those brats, and Cross especially. He thinks he can walk all over me. And to that I say, no. Nothing that happens to stay closed. I'm not talking about water, but would that be the case? I have one thing to say to you, Otsuki. Can you run his fate? Osuki, can you run his fate? If you got all these issues, can you run his fate? In fact, Osuki, I got a question for you, buddy. Where are you right now? Whose ship are you on? Who built this ship, huh? Who built the ship with their abilities, huh? Osuki, you got that dog in you, Osuki? Osuki, if you really build like that, Yang, fight him. Hey, the whole planet's culture, all the Sumerian was apparently based on power. Run his fade. If you really think, run his fade. Oh, but wait, you won't do that. Oh, what? Even if I were to manifest the sword in your hands, if I were to break the fourth wall, but like backwards, and lower myself into your dimension and hand you this blade, you wouldn't run nothing. Because Osuki, you aren't like that for real. You and I both know that, Osuki. So let's not play these games. Let's not play them. But so you know for a fact that yes, in fact, Maru and Cross can walk all over you, literally and figuratively. Sit your overconfident behind now, talking all that smack about my goats. But would that be the case? Got bad dramatic with that one for some reason. But we see that ultimately, the Osuki believes it's basically Dabura's fault we got chased off of our planet. And like, in the literal sense that he was the one who ran the duel that ended up slaying Dura and then pushing them to this point, yeah. But at the same time, would you rather have stayed on the planet and died to the Discontinuity? Or would you rather, like, instead of having Dabura on your side now, as a chieftain, and admittedly, king-like figure, would you have rather died at his hands, if he stayed with the Discontinuity and didn't follow Dura's last wish? Like, what would you want instead? Like, dog, either you escape here and try the best you can, or you get slaughtered by the 1,000. There are only 50,000 Rumelians left. At least if the 50,000 Samorians number we got is accurate. Buddy, you were not winning against Inosuke, clearly. If Dabura had not betrayed. So, like, I get it. He's in a very rough situation. He was oppressed. But, like, Gengarudi, let some synapses fire, dog. And plus, you can't beat them. If you have such a problem with it, go fight him. Oh, wait, you won't? Because you're not that strong? Yeah, that's what I thought. But, with it being the case, we see that ultimately, even the old man, he's old, and he's got his beliefs, and he's more realistic, as he says, but could you really beat him, Osuki? Or even the twins, for that matter. So he basically calls Osuki's bluff. And notably, Osuki goes, darn it. Because, like, he knows he can't. He doesn't have that dog in him. He's soft. He's soft as toilet paper. And we see that ultimately the older gentleman says, just stay calm. The decision maker can only veto a council decision twice. Which is interesting. So, essentially, if they had pushed it to a third vote, then they, like, Dabura wouldn't be able to interfere. So that's another reason why it's not like a dictatorship. Because, like, once again, dictatorship, they make the rules, they say everything, you follow, or else. So, we see that, apparently, Modulu's injury is already common knowledge among the council. We'll get the same majority vote this time, just like before. So, that does confirm that previously the majority vote was actually in favor of conquering Japan and then presumably the planet for themselves, becoming the new Diskuntai, as the guy will admittedly go on to say in a second. But Dabura had vetoed that. He didn't want to do it, which is very interesting, but does fit his character so far. And I'll go into that a bit more when we see Dabura in a bit. As we see, the old gentleman says, then we'll finally get what we want. I can't wait to crush the silent nation. A country with no military being the point of contact. Don't see an opportunity like that every day. And just in the same way that I was talking about how if aliens showed up, we'd be fried. There would probably be sentient aliens that think like this. But when I tell you, Alabama Nuclear would head for their dome at light speed. Well, obviously not light speed, infinite mass. But man, I feel like this is like attacking and invading Japan for the submarines right now is the quickest way to get everyone else in the world just be like, they're gonna be like hollow technique. The bomb nuclear, and just immediately hollowize the entire ship. You do not want to run smoke. But, with it being the case, we see that the old man says, we only have superficial knowledge of Earth's military technology. And notably, I'm talking about the bomb nuclear of, like, today. I talk of over 60 years into the future. But, we see that the man says, luckily for us, the country we're negotiating with is a sorcerer state. Meaning, sorcerers have jurisdiction, and it's not, typical nuclear. But we see, but that does also imply the existence of other sorcerer states. I'm assuming it's wherever Miguel is from. I forget where specifically in Africa Miguel is from, but I'm assuming wherever Miguel is from would also count as a sorcerer state. Because, like, that's the only other place I think that's been referenced to have sorcery. Every other place that have curses, that's where Gojo was going on, like, worldwide missions. But, like, in terms of sorcerers, I'm not sure if, like, any of them do have mass, like, influence unless they've traveled. And I mean, like, traveled from Japan to create mass influence somewhere else. But to then create a sorcerer state. However, we see that the man Osuki says, if we try to play nice, aiming for coexistence, let's think we're weak and we'll get stolen from again. We should take a strong stance, even if it means confrontation. Which I do somewhat get, but like, Gangaroonie. Stay hydrated for one. And for two, last time y'all tried to run the fade overstanding on business and it meant confrontation, y'all lost Dura. And then the time before that, y'all lost your original lands and then got fried and then reduced to 50,000. It's like, I'm not sure if you actually got that dog in you to be an oppressor. But we see that first, the older man says, first, we need to set up an autonomous zone in their capital. I won't budge on that. And Osuki says, this time we'll be like the Diskuntai. I'll never let someone steal from us again. Which is, it's a bit rough, but this is where the, let's just say it gets a little bit sticky. And you may be wondering why I'm saying things get sticky, and I think it's because I don't fully disagree with Osuki. I understand why his immediate thought, once they have the chance of freedom and the ability to oppress, is to oppress, because they were oppressed. How many stories have you read about the cycle of hatred, and very specifically how it's consistently perpetuated by a new person becoming someone who's going to be hated? The whole reason why, like, ultimately slaughtering someone who took something from you is just going to make them come to slaughter you, and then your children, like, it's a never-ending cycle. And ultimately, the only way to transcend the cycle is to give up, in a way. And ultimately, the Romelians have a strong culture of not giving up, of their belief, persistence, their eternity of belief. And notably, I don't entirely disagree on the idea that everything can be solved with diplomacy as long as it's tried first. My only issue with Osuki and clearly some Samurians, or really some Romelians, as the only non-Romelian Samurian is Dabura here, they are so eager to leap into conflict when at this point they kind of don't have to. They're starting with essentially a mostly fresh slate, but they want to run the Fade immediately, just like Earth wants to run the Fade immediately. Why? Because humans immediately relate, like just sentient beings seemingly just by nature seem to want to go to conflict and dominate, which ultimately is not the move for either side in this case. But of course, that doesn't seem to matter, as naturally someone comes to Jabaloma. Jabaloma, why are you withholding your answer about whether or not we should coexist with Earthlings? And Jabaloma goes, why? Because you are doing the same. And we see Cross have a revelation here. All three of his eyes open up wide. And we see that Yuka admits, you're not sure what to do either, Cross. That's why you disguised yourself as Maru, to learn more about us. Am I wrong? And remember, this is the entire, this was the build-up to the flashback. We kind of ended it right at the start of this chapter. And this is true, right? Ultimately, Maru still didn't really understand humans. Or no, well, Maru doesn't as well. But still, Cross especially didn't really understand humans. While Maru's reports may have given something, it was very limited. Cross needed to understand the human experience himself. He needed to get his own opinion on it. And notably, he didn't have one. Outside of possible conquest, which seemed to be the case. But even then, he just wasn't really sure. Notably, now he's had an experience with humans. He's seen his own brother begin a conflict and just didn't want to perpetuate it. Then he came in and stopped him. We saw him have a day with Yuka and then be reached out to. We saw him see Tsurugi want to be neighbors in accordance with their ideal. He's seeing the potential for humanity and coexistence now that he did not see before. And he's willing to experiment with it. And that's what Yuka believes. And we see that Jabaloma is in a very similar predicament. And once again, this feels very familiar. I'll talk about why in a sec. Jabaloma declares, you and I carry 10 votes each. If we vote for coexistence, then surely it'll overturn what's been the majority decision until now. I suppose Dabura could veto it again, though. But obviously, the idea of Dabura vetoing again doesn't matter, because realize the previous majority vote, as Jabaloma implies here, was conquest, was violence against humanity, and very specifically taking them over, becoming the new Deskunte, becoming the new oppressor. But Jabaloma had held back, and very specifically Dabura, your current chieftain, their king of sorts, vetoed it. It was like, no, we're not doing that. So I highly doubt spontaneously Dabura is going to veto any action that is taken. He very specifically just didn't want to invade, as we know why, based on his personality that we've gotten so far. So he said no. And we see that ultimately Jabaloma, the past, is willing to leave the decision to the future. A very similar way that Jabaloma, well, no, let me put it this way. Jabaloma and Usami are on very particular points where they are both, quote-unquote, the past of their respective organizations, but they are trying to put their faith in and leave the decision-making, how things are handled, to the future. In Jabaloma's case, it is Cross and Maru, and in Usami's case, it is Yuka and Tsurugi, hoping that the future will be able to guide those from the past and lead to something better. And that's why he puts all of his power, his 10 votes, along with Cross's 10 votes, as essentially one 20 vote group together. He's going to follow their lead. And since Cross hadn't necessarily declared a lead at this point, Jabaloma hadn't acted. And we see that Cross says, but don't you have your own wishes on the matter, Jabaloma? And we see Jabaloma declare, entrusting others is a plenty valid wish. Once again, Jabaloma does not want to take the power of the future out of the hands of the future. He wants to support them, which I think is a good thing. In our world, most of the time it's kind of the opposite, where ultimately power wants to be held firmly by whoever has it, and typically those who have it or those who got it when they were younger, then keep it for a long time. Some people keep the power that they hold until they perish, and they eventually pass that power to those they've already raised to maintain said power. So it is actually an outstanding case of acceptance for Jabaloma to transcend the want to maintain power or use power in his own way. His own opinion doesn't matter because he believes the future should decide it. And very specifically, I think this is that same mentality that Cross initially praised him for at the start of the flashback. Or not the start of the flashback, 2 chapters ago, when Cross explained that Jabaloma was able to maintain serenity, maintain focus and clarity when it came to dealing with making progress with the Discunte, despite having lost his daughter to the Discunte in the past. Because Jabaloma has a clear head and because Jabaloma has faith in the future. That future was his daughter, but now it's seemingly Cross and Maru, and that's why he's willing to throw his weight behind them. And we see Cross sit in the voting council. Obviously, being one of the people who built the ship, he has 10 votes and likely a whole lot of political power because he is the facilitator of their current existence. Same thing with Maru, who presumably also has 10 votes. While Jabaloma has 10 votes, at least makes me believe that he was high-ranking, if not the chieftain. I suppose Dura would be the only other chieftain, but Dura wasn't ever called the chieftain, I don't think, in the flashback. And on top of that, there was the council that existed previously, so maybe Jabaloma was the original head of the council. In fact, he is the one who counted the votes in this case, as we see the two options, which presumably is something like approve invasion, disapprove invasion. But with that being the case, we see that Cross begins to think back on all he experienced in presumably the past day or so. As the child told him, thanks! As Tsurugi said, I'm sorry. And as Yuka said, let's put an end to all that, Cross. And we see, very specifically, Dura's own message and belief, his understanding, begin to leak through as well. Cities and villages were all once built on the ideals of someone long ago. And we see Cross look upon the many buildings that his family used to live in, his people used to live in, and the destruction that was wreaked upon them by the Discunte. The people, or maybe even not just the Discunte, the other Samorians who trampled over their culture and their nature and their life. All that was lost. He's thinking of that. And we see, as he looks down to that singular rock, that presumably is a reference to the rock that his own father was clutching in his hands, he tenses and grows and furls with anger. And we see that both Osuki and the older gentleman, at first are like, yeah, buddy, this is our game now. Only to suddenly look shocked, and Jabaloma, who counts the vote, seemingly says, we have reached the majority vote. We will strive for coexistence with the Earthlings. Our first step toward this goal should be a better understanding of Japan, the representative country of Earth. Let us set up discussions and cultural exchanges with them to facilitate that. And we see Osuki say, huh? Wait a minute! Cross, Jabaloma! You were against coexistence before! And Cross admits, no. We were withholding our judgment until now. Which is a good way to do it, right? Ultimately, technically, they aren't switching sides if they never picked a side. Obviously, most of the time when you stay silent on something, it's like the bystander effect, right? You stay silent on something, you're kind of supporting the two options. Like, if you're not actively against, bullying, you're letting bullying happen. Might as well be supporting it. So that's what they had interpreted that as, but it wasn't the case. And I think very particularly, Cross and his anger that's shown here isn't necessarily anger. Well, it is anger at the loss of what was once his home, but I think he's so furious about this, and the reason he says no, he wants to go for coexistence and not violence, is because he doesn't want to be the new Discunte. He doesn't want to perpetuate this cycle of violence and destruction for no reason. He's seen that there's at least hope within multiple humans of connection, of appreciation, of bonding, and rather, ultimately, the destruction of humanity, the conquest of it, would just make them the new people to be hated. And there's no point in that, at least not yet. And notably, as Daburo will go on to point out, they still do have the capacity to fight back if a need be, but right now there's no need. It would be violence for violence sake, essentially. And while that is a thing that happens all the time, there's no need to, at least not immediately. And we see that both Jabaloma and Cross are pushing that. And Osuki declares, Modulo isn't here! This vote should be invalid! And we see Cross immediately saying, he already stated his stance in favor of coexistence before this meeting. Which is true. We do know that Maru, being the special envoy, does want to coexist with humanity. The whole idea of this point was that they were coming here to find neighbors. Dura's definition of neighbors. And we see, ultimately, that with this being the case, where before Osuki hated that Dabura vetoed and interfered, he now wants to see what Dabura wants to do and says, Dabura, what will you do? And ultimately, Dabura, checking his neck. And I will admit, I do wonder how much, I read it in a certain way in live reaction. And I'm still, looking at the panel again. It is hard for me to read. But he does this. And, at least to me, if someone's doing this, especially in the middle of an important meeting, you're bored. You're disinterested. You don't care if anything. But part of me does want to chalk this up. This kind of, as Dabura's still being uncomfortable with power. He has it. He knows he can use it. He knows he can wield it. It's in his culture, right? But still, Dabura was established to be a person who did not want power, who did not want to fight, who did not want to be. He didn't want to be someone to wield all this might. And he still does not want to wield all this might against people. It's why he vetoed the decision to conquer them before, right? Remember, the initial vote, the initial majority vote, as the chapter is called, was in favor of taking over Japan and fighting the humans. But he vetoed that. He doesn't want to seek violence. And ultimately, now that he's achieved a response that he's okay with, he's like, it sounds fine to me. He just doesn't seem to, it is very, he looks very dismissive here. But I think it's also just him being awkward. I don't know. Have you ever met a gentle giant who's socially awkward? I'd say I was one, but no, I've always been rather like, oh, because I was raised by a family of yappers. And ultimately, you gotta yap at something. I yap at the camera right now, but trust me, I be yapping all the time. I've been yapping ever since I was a baby. Not a baby, but like, as soon as I learned how to yap, I never stopped yapping. It's in my blood. But in particular, I know a couple people who are like very large, big, strong, and intimidating. And while a lot of them are very sociable and lighthearted, they just scare people. I know a lot of people who are big, large, strong, but are not necessarily the best socially and scare people. And ultimately, they are a bit awkward, and they'll have those moments like this where they look disinterested or disengaged or something like that. But ultimately, they are engaged. They just don't really want to show it because they aren't good at showing it. And notably, they're intimidating whenever they do tend to show it. Like, notably, I'm very used to looking people in the eyes. Because in my culture, that's the way you respect somebody. You look somebody in the eyes. I was raised to do it. I've really, like, there are occasional times when I'm uncomfortable. The only time it ever comes out is, like, when I like somebody. Then it's only gets hard for me to look them in the eyes. I'm like, wow. I'm kind of getting lost in them. But 9 out of 10 times, I'm always just... And that's why you'll very consistently see me smile and stuff like that. Because I am a large guy myself. Not the largest. I'm not the biggest. The largest. Some apartments. Regardless. I'm not that. But I am, like, 6'1", 6'2" in shoes, 200 plus pounds, and I look like I'm a fully bearded man. I'm a full grown man who is bigger than a good chunk of the population. And I consistently look people in their eyes. And my resting face is this. I'm quite intimidating. But typically I try to play that off by opening my eyes up more, smiling more, being more actively engaged, so people aren't scared. But Dabra, he never really had social training, so he never figured that out. That's why I don't take this as genuine disinterest. It's more like, this is what I want, but I'm not exactly, like, he still doesn't want the power. I'm going to interpret that for Dabra, and not that he just, like, doesn't care about any of the affairs, because he vetoed violence in the first place, because he doesn't like violence. And we see that ultimately, Osuki says, darn you, all you ever do is deny our wishes. But Dabra does pretty much give his reasoning to why he vetoed in the first place and why he's not vetoing this majority vote this time. As he says, conflict, or invasion, to put it bluntly, can be done at any time. However, once we begin an invasion, there will be no further chance to properly understand each other. So let's get to know each other first. Didn't we leave Samuria in search of our neighbors to begin with? Once again, this is the thing, I don't blame it. He does look so, like... He does look very, very, like, disengaged, which is, like, that would be super hard and very annoying to see. But I think this is him, like, essentially even fighting his own, like, culture and programming, right? Like, he's meant to be supposedly the alpha, the apex, the beginning and the end. But he's not doing that. And two, he very specifically is living by Dura's ideals, Dura's request, which was clearly implanted in Maru and Cross, who brought them here. So he's like, yeah, we left and we put ourselves in this position for a reason. Should we not at least try? Should we not at least attempt to stick to that reason, the original point of why we came here and how we came here? To find neighbors instead of just immediately leaping to conquest, when conquest is always an option, right? And I think that's the important thing. I understand why, going back to my analogy from earlier, why the Sumerians flashed Dabra, right? They put the weapon on the table and like, you see what this is? That's kind of how things work, right? I'm not going to go too deep into it, but once again, obviously, Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo is a very heavily political series. At least it's very heavily talking politically, so I feel like y'all shouldn't get too bad at me for going a little bit political with it. But I want you to think about a lot of the most major, quote-unquote, the major successful, quote-unquote, peaceful movements in history. The only reason they were ever peaceful was because there was the consistent threat of violence, of retaliation. It was peaceful because people were trying to be diplomatic. However, if there was no threat of violence, progress would have never been made. Unfortunately, the universal language is violence. It's not communication. It's what can them hands do. I want you to look into, and I'm not, once again, I'm not going to get into super specifics because I like having a channel, and I currently have 2 strikes on it. I'm scared. But, very specifically, look into some of the most progressive and popular peaceful movements you've ever heard. They either had a counter group that, and by counter group I mean a group that wasn't peaceful, but still had their same ideals, that worked alongside them, that acted as the unspoken weapon, such as Dabura, or at the same time they were just more violent than you think. Or they were more violent than you think. A lot of peaceful movements are just sanitized, because a lot of history is sanitized. It just sounds better that way. Oh, such and such was always peace. If you actually look at it, no. So just do a little research into history and realize that every single movement was either violent by its nature or peaceful with the threat of violence. And sometimes a little bit of violence is mixed into the peaceful anyway. So, like, that's simply how it works. So I don't blame Dom for being like, let's try it. And worst comes to worst, it goes wrong, we fight him. He's right. Why immediately leap in the conflict if there's no need to? Why leap in the conflict at all? If they attack first. Like, once again, I get it. Retaliatory action. And we see that Jabaloma says, Cross, I deeply respect you. And we naturally see Cross get a little bit flustered with that. As like I mentioned, he was the one who praised Jabaloma's self-control and ability to look forward prior in the flashback. But Cross says, please don't say that. I'm just tired. That's all. And very specifically, I don't think Cross is physically tired in this moment, right? Like, you could say, oh, well, maybe he's tired from hanging out with Yuka and Tsurugi and Mino and that. No. What I think he's tired of is the cycle of violence. And the cycle of hatred. The oppressor and the oppressed. He's tired of that. And he is relatively young, right? He's 19. He's Maru's twin brother, so in Earth years, he's 19. But even still, he's tired of that cycle, that violence that would ever persist if they were to leap into conflict. So ultimately, peace is the more logical route. A focus on peace avoids violence, avoids conflict. It doesn't confirm it won't happen, but at least it makes it more a last resort than something that will happen automatically. And I think that's good. And I understand why Cross claims he's tired. And obviously, Osuki and this old man are meant to set up a faction of division. And I do think ultimately that's also what the guy with the clean jawline was also meant to do. The idea that the humans in the Somorians, some of them are itching just to get into battle. By their very nature, a sentient species. One wishes to be the oppressed and the other to be the one wishes to be the oppressor and the other to be the oppressed. Both are racing for that. But ultimately, there are, just in our world, as in our world, there are many people who don't want such a cycle to ever exist again. And right now, those who don't want that cycle are winning. But I wouldn't be shocked if, against the greater odds of the others, against other people, the people who want coexistence, some Somorians, some humans, go to stoke conflict anyway. But, with it being the case, we cut back to a building, and we see a meeting between Yuka, Tsurugi, Usami, Jabaloma, and Cross, specifically, not Maru, who's not here at this point. But we see that Usami essentially reveals why he's so heavy-handed, like, we should not fight them. Not right now. I'm fine with looking for Yuji too, because we may just need him. As he says, or thinks, when I first heard they were driven from their planet after losing a duel, I wasn't convinced. But now I understand. He wasn't the one who lost. They lost to him. Now, obviously, I'm not sure if Usami got the full context that I presume Yuka got. I do doubt Usami got the full story. And I wonder, like, once again, I wonder what the context of that flashback was in universe. Obviously, that was just Cross's memories, right? Or, like, even really more grand than that. It was like a showing for us as the reader. But I do wonder how much information each of them received. Was this story just told by Jabaloma and Cross just now? Like, how much, essentially, I wonder how much context our characters have. Usami and Yuka in particular. Tsurugi may have minimal context. He wasn't there when Yuka made the proposal. That clearly influenced Cross to go with coexistence. So, like, I wonder how much of the story they actually know. Because I wonder if Usami's assuming when he says, they lost to him. I wonder if he's thinking, like, oh, Dabura usurped them and then took control, like, willingly and then became their king by far. I wonder if he knows the context of Dura, and Dura specifically requesting that Dabura take role as the protector of the Somorian. Like, I wonder if he, or of the Romelians. I wonder if he knows that. I doubt it. And I do wonder, a character who I wonder if is going to play a role again, considering Geigei's history. Do you ever think we're going to see Dabura's sister again? She seems like a character that would be very, very important. And she's the only other non-Rumelian Discunte on the ship. Obviously, it seems she's not a combatant, but still, I'd want to meet her. I want to know her name, considering she's the whole reason Dora had to die in the first place, right? She's the whole reason that Dabura was put in the position where he had to kill Dora in the first place. So I do hope we get to see her, and she's not literally just, hey, I hope she's not another Sumiki, alright? I don't want her to be, here's the system plot device that we're going to use to control an extremely powerful or potential villain character, and then we're never going to mention her again. And I don't want her to end up like Yorozu. I want to actually meet the sister and hope she's a character. But we don't know the context, we'll see. As we see, but clearly they got some history, because now they did learn about, like, Kallions and Rumeli. And it did sound like Cross telling a story. So maybe, because, like, that's the thing, the way he says it here, I wasn't convinced, but now I understand he wasn't the one who lost, they lost to him. It's like, maybe this is based on the context of the story they just told. Because obviously the flashback for us was also told as if Cross himself was telling it. So I don't know, it's interesting. I wonder how much context they have. Because we see Yuka say, Kallions die eventually, right? So every time a Kallion dies, Rumelians, Kallions are immortal, so they don't die from natural causes. They can only be killed. That's interesting. That makes them more curse spirit-esque than still Shikigami. Because as far as we know, there's no, even with, like, Rika, now that Yuta's dead, we know the ring still seemingly has, like, properties that wards off curses, supposedly, or acts as a protective charm. But, like, there has been no mention of Rika. Why? Because the Shikigami, or the curse, well, even then, like, if you think Rika's still a vengeful curse or Shikigami type thing, regardless, but under this context, we'll talk of her as a Shikigami. As far as we know, once a Shikigami user perishes, the Shikigami goes with them, right? It's a bond. Like, Megami's 10 Shadows wouldn't be maintained after Megami himself dies. What's a good example? The only reason that Geto and Kenjaku, by proxy's curse spirit manipulation, work differently is because they were capturing existing curses. So that's why when they died, the curses were just free. They were released, essentially. Curse spirit manipulation just put them on a leash. So Kallions may not be, because I thought the Kallions were just a manifestation of, like, an ancient Rumelian's technique that never went away. But unless there's, like, some binding vow or something unique to Rumelian sorcery / biology, I have no idea how they could maintain that if eventually, or if they are truly genuinely immortal. But they can be, they have extreme longevity. They aren't truly immortal. If they're truly immortal, they wouldn't be able to die. But we see that Yuka goes, wow. And Tsurugi's like, ugh, no wonder you all treat them as sacred beasts then. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Notably, nothing even on our planet is immortal. There are, like, Greenland sharks that have lived multiple centuries, but, like, that's in very specific environments and very specific things, and that's only, like, what? Maybe 6.5 generations? Maybe 7 generations? So, but for Kallions to be, like, immortal, and this just to be a fact, I think it's very likely that there are Kallions from the ancient days that are still around. And I understand why people would worship them. Heck, people on our planet worship animals that were not immortal. Imagine if there were actual immortal animals of great power on our planet. We'd worship them too. Or at least people would. But we see that Usami says, regarding cultural exchange, I'm thinking maybe a dinner party would be good. What do you think? And Jabaloma says, that sounds wonderful. I'll send Maru and Cross to help with preparations. It is very interesting that their saviors, the ones who free the rebellions, are consistently being used as the points of contact. But I suppose, considering they are the ones who propose the idea, or at least Maru, and then Cross presumably backed them up, they are the ones to support the idea of coexistence in general. Making them the two to go out is good. We know there are clearly members on the council who do want coexistence, as it was a close vote before, but in the majority vote was for conflict. But then in this case, I highly doubt it was just Jabaloma and Cross's 20 vote that allowed them to be for coexistence. There were presumably some submarines who wanted coexistence as well. But sending the two who are actually with the foundations of the possibility for coexistence does make sense. But it's funny, because, like, essentially they are presumably the number 2 and number 3 strongest Rumelian. Strongest Samurian at this point, or at least of the 50,000 that are here. They're probably right behind Dabura, at least based on what the old man says to Uzuki, and Uzuki doesn't disagree about not being able to fight Maru or Cross, or the twins in general. So, it's interesting. Most powerful assets sent forward as the connectors. And we see that since, obviously, Maru and Cross are both being sent to help with preparations, Usami says, can I count on you two for us then? And both Yuka and Tsurugi are like, huh? We can't cook anything fancy, though. Which, hey, at least they can cook. Notably, what's the fanciest thing I've cooked? Anything, like, fried, I guess. Like, anything that, like, requires, like, being battered and stuff like that. Like, I've made, like, pancakes and waffles from scratch. Like, that's just like flour, sugar, milk, egg. Like that's not, it's not too crazy. I don't think like the most complicated thing I think I've baked is like cinnamon rolls, because that's like that was just like an extremely annoying and convoluted process to make cinnamon rolls. I love cinnamon rolls, but like darn were they annoying to bake, and they didn't even come out good. But like, I can't make anything complex either, so I don't blame for being concerned. Like, I make quesadillas, but that's not really complex either. You throw a tortilla, you throw whatever you want in there, boom, that's a quesadilla. But we see that Yuka's almost insulted at that and says, "We," as if she can cook something fancy. But I need to sip. Oh no. This is what happens when you record so much. Whew. Low recording session of doom. But, this being the case, she says "we" as if she can cook something fancy. And we see that Usami says, "We'll give you all the guidance you need, of course." So essentially, they're cooking as the basis of it, but they'll be helped, right? They aren't really going to be responsible for feeding all the Samarians. Or even, like, we don't know which Samarians will be there. Presumably it may just be the council, right? I highly doubt they're going to get all 50,000 Samarians in one place. That would require, like, a stadium and a lot of food that 4 people simply couldn't prepare. But, with it being the case, we see that the two of them do team up to say something. Yuka's and Maru's Deli Kitchen. And this is adorable. I do love the two of them. And I love how this implies that Yuka, like, made Maru lean down, because we know Maru is taller than Yuka, but Yuka ends up taller here. So, like, they look so happy. He looks so tight. He looks so tiny here. But I do like that these two have a good bond. Yuka now just has the best character dynamics. While I was, like, kind of pushing that I did like Tsurugi and Maru's character dynamic more, now it is just Yuka. Yuka just has a fantastic dynamic with both brothers. And very specifically, it's interesting that we're calling him Maru now. We're going by a fuller version of his name. We just called him Maru for a while, but now they are calling him, or at least he's specifically addressing himself, and presumably they're calling him Maru, which is nice. And we see that both Cross and Tsurugi are like, the what now? And Yuki says, "You never heard of that old cooking show? It's gotten super popular again." And as a person who doesn't watch much TV, no, I don't. I have no idea reference of it. But then again, there are a lot of references I just don't get. I don't listen to much new music either. I'm very old. The only time I get exposed to new music is like edits. That's about it. But we see that Maru admits, "I only did what she told me to do," which very, very good of you, Maru. Question what your friends make you do something. Don't follow blindly. But we see that Tsurugi says, "You sound like some delinquents lackey." And ultimately they move right on, as Yuki says, "First, let's make sure there aren't any problems with our list of foods. Then we just have to make them and taste them." And naturally Tsurugi, I don't know what it is. Now I'm noticing it more and more. Why are sometimes anime characters drawn without noses? Like, why do they not, like, they don't even have dot noses. Like, why do they just not have noses? They don't have noses here. Like, this is really tiny, so maybe I can excuse it. But they do not have noses. This is more, I think I'm just paying attention to it more. Because, like, I get on Sakamoto's Day's case about them not having noses. But I think it's just more common. I think, why do anime characters never have noses? But, like, it wouldn't even be too much. Just draw it. Like a little line. But we see that Tsurugi's ass. What do you mean, problems? And Yuki admits, if Samarians have any kind of allergies, or if Rumelians avoid certain foods due to their religion. And I do like that, right? Yuka has admitted that she respects other religions, even if she doesn't believe in one herself. And now that we do have the idea of the Kalyans and the Rumelian religions specifically introduced, I want to know more. Like, what is their god? Because ultimately, it's not the Kalyans, there are multiple Kalyans. Very specifically, Cross explained their religion as a sort of monotheistic one, where they have one individual god who's presumably like above the Kalyan. So I'm interested to see what that is, if we're ever going to get information on that. Wouldn't be the first time Gege introduces something that we don't, though. But we see that Tsurugi says, "Oh, right, there might be some meats that are similar to Kalyans. Do you guys even eat meat?" And Maru says, "Oh," or Maru says, "Oh, you don't have to go through so much trouble." And he turns to Cross to confirm that, like, right? No one's allergic to anything, right? And Cross explains, "Every Kalyan's form is unique. Rumelians eat livestock raised from meat as well as what you Earthlings call fish." So that is interesting. I wonder, like, clearly this is meant to be the Kalyan in this discussion, I'm presuming, like, just a differently manifested creature. But then, like, there's this chicken, and this cow, and these fish, and this pig, like, what were their livestock like? Like, we don't know. We just don't know enough. And I think that is a good thing, but at the same time, I would love to see what their livestock was. And we see that Tsurugi's shocked and says, "Oh, so you had oceans?" And Yuka says, "Of course they did. Oceans are the source of all life." Which is true. We were somehow created from water. And I do mean it's still weird. Like it's like obviously the universe itself is just weird. Like Big Bang Theory is like, oh, there were things that bang. Well, not really. Like suddenly the universe just exploded into existence. How? String theory has like theories behind it. Like the pre-Big Bang stuff is unknown. Like it's heavily debated because like we just don't get it. We just know the universe is what, like 13.8 billion years old. Like we have that just based on like carbon dating, like where the I forget what direction. Like if you were to then again, it always changes because we're hurtling throughout space. But like you point back the opposite direction of wherever we're hurtling to, and like that's apparently the center of the universe. What was once the center of the universe, then it exploded. We don't know much, but essentially, not only did apparently the universe just flick on one day and say, yeah, BT Dumb gonna exist now, and then started aging from that point. But then, in water, just a combination of molecules, they just randomly were like, yeah, let's live. But ultimately, in a way, life is just like worse, because life ends. Molecules also like break apart eventually, but still, it's crazy how the universe just didn't have life, and then spontaneously we're like, life, here we go. And so far, as we can tell, we're the only life that is. There are other planets that have the conditions for life, but we haven't identified any life. There are other planets with oceans, no life. Really weird. But it's like the whole like quiet forest theory where there may be other life. What is it? It's the either quiet forest theory where like there are other sentient species out there where they just don't make any noise or don't identify themselves because there's something that comes and destroys them if they do, which is like the darker interpretation of it. Or there's just the more like isolated. I forget what the theory is called though. The idea. Hold on. In fact, we're late into the dog. I can look it up. I got time. Let's see. What is it called? What is the theory that we are alone in the universe called? Empty forest? Is it empty forest? The rare Earth hypothesis, which argues that specific and rare combination of circumstances that allow complex life to emerge on Earth is unlikely to occur elsewhere. It is often presented as one possible answer to the Fermi paradox, which questions the apparent contradiction between high probability of extraterrestrial life and a lack of evidence for it. That's the thing, right? There's so, like, technically, the conditions for life aren't that hard, and with how big the universe is, there should be more life. Like, even, like, complex life or non-complex life is in, like, singular-celled organisms. But we just haven't, like, we haven't found anything. Even on planets close to us that have, like, water. Like, I think Mars was discovered to have water on it. No life in there. None. Like, not even non-complex. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's weird. And that's the Fermi paradox. But, with that being the case, Maru does reveal that there were no sharks, which is interesting. I mean, that does imply that there are other types of fish. Like, there were salmon? I don't know. But, also it is interesting that Cross is free to have his eyeball out, but Maru still needs to hide his. It's probably just like an aesthetic thing to help differentiate between them. But still is weird. Because he still has his eye patch, but Cross doesn't. And like, it's clearly the cat's out the bag for them, but maybe Maru just wears it in case they ever go outside. But we see that Tsurugi's like, oh. Or no, I think it's actually Yuka says, whoa, we don't have any flour-based dishes on the list. And Tsurugi says, it's not just Japanese food though, so maybe that's why. And Yuka says, sure, but how can you skip that? English, how can you skip that stuff? It's criminal. Which, hey, as a person who loves sweet treats and just like flour-based food in general, like I literally made pancakes for breakfast today. Like, yeah, it is criminal. Man, flour-based food is so good. And like, you look at a person who is a certified registered meat muncher. Like, some of my meals are legit just straight protein. Like, on certain days, I'll just take like a pound of salmon, throw it in the toaster oven and eat that. And that alone, like some water. So, you look at a certified meat muncher, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, flour-based food, it be smacking. But we see that, there we go. Tsurugi says, true, those foods are popular in other countries as well. Flour-based foods, I'm assuming, like, realistically, like any sort of, like, bread or pastry. And naturally, them not knowing what flour-based dishes are, Maru asks, flour-based dishes? And Yuki says, you know, like that takoyaki we ate together. And he immediately flashes back to the heaven that was that takoyaki and goes, Cross! Takoyaki is delicious! I don't think I've ever had it, so I do want to try it. But we see that Cross is completely disengaged. And ultimately, Tsurugi asks, hey, is Maru super picky? Or no, see, he's still calling himself. So they're still calling him Maru, but he's calling himself Maru. Interesting. But is Maru super picky? Does he have weird tastes? And ultimately, Cross is like, no, not really. Which makes sense considering the circumstances they grew up in. But ultimately, Tsurugi's like, well, in that case, then other Samurians should like it too. And Yuki says, all right, our cultural exchange event is going to be at Takopa. I think I said that right. But we see that Marulu says, "Oh, is that a new word you made up for a takoyaki party? Fantastic!" And she just keeps on going and says, "You're such a smarty pants, Takasuke. Now that that's settled, it's time to go shopping for fillings." And naturally, Maru's like, "Fillings?" And she says, "Yeah, you can put all sorts of things inside, like mochi." And naturally, Maru's like, "Mochi?" Because obviously he does all these new words. And Tsurugi, obviously seeing Cross being confused, says, "It's like this." And he shows off a taco pan. And just at the idea of Maru, Dabura, and Jambaloma all just eating out of one similar thing, Cross is like, "I'm not so sure about this." Looking really intense. And a funny way to end a fantastic chapter. This review has been going on for a minute, so let me just... Yeah, it's a worthy chapter. Once again, building into the natural... It's a very human story, despite involving aliens and sorcerers. It's a very human story. The nature of humans' predilection to conflict, the nature of some humans to want to avoid it, the complications that come with diplomacy and politics, the variations of power, the different types of power systems, the idea of council. Like, it's just good. It's good, right? I went deep into it, why I think this is such a fantastically written chapter, why it's another banger. Once again, Jujutsu Kaisen has not missed. It just keeps getting better and better and banger and banger after banger and banger. So overall, a W chapter. And once again, more Dabura characterization. And I love Dabura. He's a fantastic character. So overall, we're cooking with gas. If you've been all the way through this video, please leave Takoyaki King. Just for the love of the game. Leave Takoyaki King in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos taken to the channel. Also, you even have a Patreon down below where you support me for as well as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the 30-minute live reaction to this very chapter, ad-view variations of all my videos, you're doing at the end of every single video, and if you ever want to order a video of your own, you could become a $5 member, or no, like a $5 patron, or anything higher, and you can get a short video, or you could do 25 beans and get a longer video. Same thing if you want to do just a one-time donation for either of those things. 5 beans to the Ko-Fi, 25 beans to the Ko-Fi for short and long, respectively. And also, if you want even more early content, you can still become a patron and a member. That gets you access to the content for the second channel, that got the reaction, where I drop reaction videos at 1 p.m. EST every single Saturday. So overall, get a whole bunch of content if you become a Patreon member. I'd really appreciate it. But regardless, thank you so much for watching. Once again, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our Sketch Tier members: Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, Astro, Glacier XZ, Zera, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Gyomi, Bura Ura, Enzo, Swift Strike, Super Flame Zero, Yuki Ally, Azo2404, Striker Man, Grim, Straw, Ollie, The Boy, Corey Watson, Damon Brown, Magic, CCC, Official Popeyes, Ramondo Furen, Cray Panem, Sarah Fiel, Dino, Axis XE, Plant Crone, Pickle, Heath Nelson, Hector Gonzalez, P-Sub, Black Sage, Zapro, Tim Thomas, and Alex Kenny. Then I'd like to give a thank you to our line art tier patrons: A+A, Kevin Encarnacion, Sean, and Midnight Lord 21. Then I'd like to give a thank you to our Ink tier members: King RTX and Shrimpo the 4th Shrimp 06. Then I'd like to give a thank you to our digital art tier members: J Warrior and AZ Void. I'd like to give a final thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Waki Munoz and Waki Munoz.